star so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burning Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Monday. Hope the weekend treated you all right. And, well, it's been busy. I don't know what else on that end. Yeah, we've just been busy. Man, fall works is... I think we're about there. I see light at the end of the tunnel, and we're getting there. But big news. I guess it was Friday when they announced it. Kyle Rittenhouse, not guilty on all counts. Good on you, kid. Good on you. That's the way it should have been. I've been on the record multiple times, probably more times than I care to be, but saying that that kid had no business being there. And I've rethought that statement quite a bit. And even though my gut instinct tells me that, that kid shouldn't have been there, unlike the mainstream media, which I don't know if you guys listen to or know who Michael Malice is, but he's got a pretty good podcast. If you listen to Rogan, you've heard him on there, and he's a little bitty fella, like I don't know, he's like 5'4", 5'5", something like that. I think he might be smaller than that. I don't know. He's a short little dude. He's from he was born in the Soviet Union. He's calls himself an anarchist, and but he's got a lot of the same views I do. I haven't gone full off into the anarchy business yet, but I'm right there, kind of borderline. But anyway, he's made the point in the past, and I think it's a good idea. I think it's a very, very well made point, and it rings true here. But he said, stop calling them the mainstream media and call them the corporate media or the corporate press or something along those lines, because they are anything but mainstream. They are not a mainstream organization. So, I titled this episode, Some People Just Need Killing. And part of it has to deal with this Rittenhouse deal, and then part of it just has to deal with vigilante justice throughout time immemorial. And but I'm going to focus a little bit on the Old West, because it's kind of like most of the Old West. It's been romanticized to no end, and the posse and the vigilante is kind of well known throughout the West. So, anyhow, some people just need killing, and if you look at this Rittenhouse deal, the people that he killed were not good people. The other guy that he shot doesn't seem to be a good person. The one dude was a pedophile. raped kids. Like, yeah, bad dude, real bad dude, deserved to die. The more I heard about like listening to the the testimonies and whatnot, and just the trial, it also sounded like this guy was obviously mentally ill, but he basically just committed suicide by Rittenhouse. More more than anything, like he seemed like that guy just kind of wanted to die, and also probably needed killing. And I know we are set up by a system of law and order here, and trial by jury, and everything. I believe in due process, habeas corpus, all of that. I believe in that. But there's also some people, and I don't believe in the death penalty. Not that I don't believe some people just need killing. I do. I do. A lot of people. But I don't believe in the death penalty just because I don't trust the government. And that's the whole thing. There is yeah. Just look at this Rittenhouse deal. This thing should never have been brought. He should never been charged with anything. Maybe initially with the firearms across state lines, but once all the facts came out about that, you find out that, well, it was somebody else that gave the gun to him, and that guy is now being brought up on charges in Wisconsin, where the shooting took place, not Illinois, where Kyle Rittenhouse was from. So, yeah, there was the whole behind or carrying across state lines, that was a myth, just like a lot of media narratives. I don't know if you, I guess if you were around my age and probably a little older, in junior high and high school, you learned about yellow journalism. That was a big topic that they brought up, pertaining to the Spanish-American War. And the yellow journalism and the lies and the pushing in a narrative that got us, that drug us into the Spanish-American War. Well, that just remember, folks, that yellow journalism never left. It's still around. Don't be fooled by all that. And this was yellow journalism at its finest. So I hope this Rittenhouse. Oh, I guess up front, I don't know if we should make this kid a hero just yet. There's been, I don't know. I saw it was kind of a sneaky move that the media pulled, the corporate media. And this is New York Post, who, granted, they're better than the New York Times, for the most part. But I still count them in the corporate media. They had an article and a video to go along with it of what was alleged to be Rittenhouse in a fight. Well, more like jumping into a fight and sucker punching a girl. I don't know if it was him or not. I'm gonna guess not, because it was on the New York Post and it wasn't plastered all over CNN and MSNBC. So I'm guessing it wasn't him, but I don't know. However, there's, like, you just don't know. I don't know how good of a kid this guy is. I don't know. But when you look at how the law enforcement in that community just like was nowhere to be found, it's sad that a 17-year-old and a bunch of other guys from within the community felt they had to take it upon themselves to protect businesses and clean up and all. And it was sad that they felt that they needed to carry firearms to protect themselves, which obviously they did. And so this has been called vigilante justice, and well, that once again, I know I've said it a million times, but I can't say it enough. If you're watching cable news, just stop. Stop watching cable news. Cable news is poison. I think it's important to read these like mainstream corporate media outlets. Like I still have I subscribe to the New York Times because it's a little harder to outright lie and maintain somewhat integrity in print. On the cable news type side of things, that like I said, they just don't watch that. It's not worth your time. I don't know where I was going with that, but oh yeah, they called him a white supremacist. It's amazing how many people don't know that the people that were shot were white. It's amazing because the way the media spun it made it look like he was some white supremacist dude just shooting a bunch of black people, a bunch of black protesters. But it wasn't the case at all. Everybody involved in this whole deal was white, except for the guy, the black guy that got shot that sparked the entire ordeal. Aside from that, the whole big hullabaloo was over 4 white guys, 3 that got shot and 1 that did the shooting. And the vigilante justice. The narrative is now it's just legal for white people to go hunting down black protesters, and I don't know if they made the comparisons to the Klan yet, but I'm sure they have. I mean, that's kind of right up their alley. Why not? You know, the Klan and the Nazis, those are the go-tos, because they're the most evil ever. And the Klan did start out as and I don't know what they do anymore, but all the way up through their heyday, even through the civil rights movement, they were basically a vigilante justice organization. Now, their idea of justice is not the idea of what my idea of justice or most people, but the actions they took, regardless of what they were motivated by, was they believed they were doling out some sort of justice. And this Rittenhouse deal is nothing of the sort. Like, after listening to all of it, I mean, and I've been following this case fairly closely since the beginning, and all the video footage was out there within hours, if not minutes, of when it happened. I don't think there was any sort of justice trying to be done on either side of this particular deal. It was just more of a angry mob and self-defense. I mean, there was no trying to dole out justice. But there was plenty of cases. Like I said, the Klan was one of those. Mostly trying to keep those uppity blacks in line. But there was also this one I found was called the Anti-Horse Theft Association. And this dude, he was in Clark County, Missouri. A guy was named David McKee. Eventually was a major in the Union Army. But he first started in 1854, so pre-Civil War. And I'm not sure where Clark County, Missouri is, but Missouri at the time was very much frontier country. And there was a bunch of horse thieves, and they also bordered Oklahoma, which was Indian territory. Just nothing. It was the whole state of Oklahoma was Indian reservation. And outside of the tribal law, much like it is today, I guess I won't say much like it is today. I don't know a whole lot about how tribal law works anymore. But at the time, the federal law officers and state law officers pretty well stayed out of Oklahoma. And so a fellow would go steal a horse from Missouri or Kansas or Illinois, wherever, and then they'd haul ass back into Oklahoma and they'd hide out there. And it was pretty big problem. Then old David McKee, he goes off to the war, comes back in 1863, got discharged early for some sort of injury. And finds out it's worse than ever before. So he goes and consults with a couple of his neighbors and buddies, and they basically form, which was, it was kind of like a neighborhood watch deal. Somebody got their horse stolen and said, all right, how'd it happen? They went and investigated it. They gathered evidence, whatever. And then they'd eventually go try to bring the guy that stole the horse. Then they'd bring him into to the sheriff or wherever. And they really did try to work with the law. They didn't try to go lynch somebody. There was plenty of times they killed people. And I'd have to do some more research into it, but it sounds like it was just trying to bring a guy in. He's like, I ain't coming in alive. And they're all right, fine. And they shoot him. Kind of Old West style, Show your hands. I ain't showing you my hands. All right, bam. And but they did stuff that your traditional law enforcement couldn't do. They could cross state lines with the fella. And they did it in a very smart way. So like they started in Missouri, and they covered Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa. But eventually, by 1916, it was kind of right at the top of their heyday. They had 50,000 people that were members, and they had chapters in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Arkansas, New Mexico, Colorado, and South Dakota. And so let's say somebody had a horse stolen in Illinois and they caught the guy in Iowa. Well, we got the problem of the state border. So the fellas that found him in Iowa, they would march him to the state line. They'd say, get the hell out. Get out. And he'd say, all right. And he'd step across the state line, and then the buddies from the Anti-Horse Theft Association would grab him up, and they'd say, too bad, Charlie, we're taking you to town. And then they'd take him to court or whatever. But they did that all the time. They would that is the way they could do stuff that traditional law enforcement couldn't do. Free market at works, folks. Everybody wonders, like, who's going to have cops if you don't have taxes? Well, this particular organization, you signed up for 4 years, 4-year commitment, and you paid 10 cents a year. And then each chapter or whatever, they would elect a group of people, or they would select. I don't know if it was elected or selected, but let's see. Okay, so the first charter of the AHTA in Oklahoma Territory was granted on July 27th, 1894. Members had to be at least 18 years old and of good character and public standing. Individuals enlisted for 4 years and paid annual dues of 10 cents. Anti-Horse Theft Association gave them protection from thieves, but also required they assist other members in time of need. It was organized in 1895. The order was financed by an annual fee of 20 cents per month. So anyway, it was like a subscription service, but also it was also like a club too. If you paid your dues, you also had responsibilities that came along with it. So if you were on what they called the pursuing committees, which basically is the posse, somebody got their horse stolen, they would round up the pursuing committee, the posse, and they would go track this guy down. If you were on that posse and they came by and you couldn't make it, say it was right in the middle of harvest, and you had two of your kids were sick, and your other 7 weren't old enough yet. Well, all right, give us $5, pay a fine of $5, and you don't have to go. But if you did go, they paid all your expenses. And their motto was like, they didn't care if your horse cost $5 and it took or it cost them $100 to track down the guy that stole it. You might have saved how many other horses by tracking this guy down. So they didn't care what the cost was. They just wanted to bring somebody to justice. I don't know. They didn't say what the penalty was if you didn't pay the $5 and you didn't go. Imagine you were kicked out, and I don't know if they put you on a probationary period or if they never allowed you to join back up. I don't know. But 50,000 members, that's a pretty significant chunk of people, especially in 1916 and the states that it was in. I mean, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. Missouri probably had quite a few people. Illinois, but then Iowa, I guess. But Arkansas, New Mexico, Colorado, South Dakota, probably not a whole lot of people. And between all those 50,000 members, that's a lot of people. There was another one. Where is this at? There's another one that didn't. It started out pretty decent. It was called the Bald Knobbers. I don't know where that name came from, but this was also Missouri. Missouri is kind of famous for it. I think I would imagine like West Virginia and Arkansas. Any place where they use the word holler pretty regularly. I bet you they were big on the vigilantes or the community police. Anyway, this one started out with Nathaniel Kinney. He was in Taney County, Missouri, so that'd be like Branson. This is 1883. This article says he found a deplorable state of affairs. Outlaws and renegades ruled, most of them holdovers from bushwhackers and guerrillas that rampaged through Missouri during the Civil War. Missouri was kind of a shit show during the Civil War. I don't think it's much different now. After the war, the lack of even minimal law enforcement afforded outlaws free rein. Clans elected and controlled the local sheriff, whose authority was to subpoena jury panels. If outlaws or their relatives didn't sit on the juries, they bribed those who did. As a result, although as many as 40 murders occurred in Taney County between 1865 and 1885, not a single suspect was convicted. Nat Kinney feared no man, standing 6'6" and weighing in at more than 300 pounds. Little feller. After yet another murder on September 22nd, 1883, Kinney began to consider forming a law and order league patterned after other vigilante groups that were popular during the time. When a biased jury acquitted the murderer, Kinney called together 12 of the county leaders who met in secret, forming a committee to fight the lawlessness and elect officials who would enforce the law. The group became known as the Bald Knobbers. Though the Bald Knobbers began with good intentions, the violence displayed by the vigilante group eventually gained national attention. The organization grew rapidly, and by the time they met on April 5th, 1885, 200 people showed up at a meeting at Snaps Bald, hilltop south of Forsyth, Missouri. Kinney, an excellent speaker, was unanimously elected as their leader. Extracting a vow of secrecy from his followers, Kinney instructs them to recruit new members to carry out the goals of the group. This guy sounds like he might have been a cult leader. Let's see. I'll put this up on the screen for you. Yeah, right here. You can see this. Nathaniel Kinney. 10 days, Bald Knobbers made a public display of force when 100 of them broke open the door of the county jail and kidnapped brothers Frank and Tubal Taylor. Taylor brothers were well known in the area for their viciousness and were jailed for wounding a storekeeper during an argument over credit for a pair of boots. Local store owner Joe Dickinson happened to be a bald knobber. After breaking the two out of jail, the mob hauled the brothers south of Forsyth and hanged them. The degree of violence appalled several of the founding members who quickly dropped out, but the bald knobbers continued to grow, and before long, the group had between 500 and 1,000 members. Kinney's group, this is where it gets really cool, began to further correct lawlessness by making night rides to scare such lowlifes as drunks, gamblers, or loose women into changing their ways. Hey, you whore, stop sleeping around. They frightened wife beaters, couples living in sin. Get a room, but separate. Bastards. And men who failed to support their families. Sometimes they even called on those who they simply considered ornery. Hey, you've been acting up a little bit too much. Said a little bit too much. Had a little too much spicy language in the cafe. We're gonna have to whoop your ass. They also would flog or brand suspected thieves. That's pretty cool. Arsonists and robbers. They would hang or beat a man to death for assault, disturbing the peace, or destroying property. Some bald knobbers began to use their menacing power for greed and selfish purposes as they went after men who owed them money or owned land they coveted. They settled feuds over fence slides and property deeds, whipped men for disrupting services in their churches or for supporting the wrong candidate in the election. Doesn't sound at all like modern times. But as it says, however, their harshest punishment was saved for those who talked against them. Some victims who resisted the bald knobbers disappeared. Several turned up in the woods, beaten to death. Those who lived to tell claimed that Kinney's followers killed more than 30 men and at least 4 women, but more realistic estimates put it between 15 and 18. Either way, that's a lot of people. There was also like the Ludlow massacre, which was a bunch of striking miners, and the mine owners had the National Guard called in to put down this this strike. And they're just, well, look at Batman. Batman's probably the most famous or most popular of all the superhero comic book characters, and he's a man taking the law into his own hands. It's a tale old as time, and has nothing in common with Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, it's amazing. But let's see. There's a so this. I get a lot of my research from this site. It's called Legends of America, but there's vigilante groups there, and there's a link to all of these. So there's the Anti-Horse Theft Association. There's the Atchison County Protective Association, California Vigilantes, the Bald Knobbers, Committee of 101 in Skagway, Alaska. I don't know what that is, but we're going to find out. The Committee of 101 was a vigilante that operated in Skagway, Alaska in 1898. In 1897, Jefferson Soapy Smith arrived in Skagway, Alaska. Known in former mining camps throughout the American West as the king of frontier con men, Soapy's reputation for running his illegal rackets and taking over a town was well known. Having been run out of Denver, Colorado, Soapy saw opportunity in the Klondike Gold Rush and bringing his gang of rogues and thieves, set about to repeat the process in Skagway. Setting up shop in his new saloon, named Jeff Smith's Parlor, Soapy's cons began once again in earnest. His saloon became known as the Real City Hall, even though Skagway already had an official one. Some of Skagway citizens were not so impressed with Soapy, whose heavy drinking and black temper began to get completely out of hand. After about 9 months of domination and fleecing the town, a number of Skagway citizens had enough of the man, and a vigilante group who called themselves the Committee of 101 threatened to drive Smith and his gang out of town. However, Soapy retaliated by forming his own group. He called the Committee of 303 to intimidate the first group. These are the lamest gang names of all time. Good Lord. Apparently there wasn't enough daylight in Alaska to think up a good name. Soapy alleged that his group had more than 300 members, hoping to force the vigilantes into submission, and it worked. However, when Soapy's gang took some $2,600 in gold from a Klondike miner in an illegal 3-card Monte game, the vigilantes reemerged and demanded that Soapy give him back his gold. Soapy, of course, refused, claiming that the miner had lost the gold fairly in a sporting game. The next night, on July 8th, 1898, the vigilantes organized a meeting in Juneau, Alaska. Hearing of the meeting, Soapy decided to attend himself, arriving with a Winchester rifle draped over his shoulder. When he was barred from entering, he argued with one of the 4 guards, a man named Frank Reed, who was blocking his way. Before long, a gunfight erupted, and when the smoke cleared, both men lay dead. Huh. That's pretty anticlimactic. All right. Moving on to the next one with Dodge City Vigilantes, the Fierce Missouri Bald Knobber, same one. Missouri Slicker Wars, Montana Vigilantes, San Francisco Vigilantes, Shelby County, Texas Regulators, Stewart Stranglers. Let's see what that one is. Stewart Stranglers of Montana. All right. Grantville Stewart, best known as being a Montana cattleman, was also credited as earning his living as a miner. Merchant, a horse trader, banker, rancher, real estate investor, historian, and writer. Determining that the leaders of these wrestling gangs were a number of hard cases, Stewart soon gathered up 14 fighting men to go up after the outlaws and stop the thievery. So Stewart called his men a vigilante committee, much like those that had operated in the Virginia City area 2 decades earlier. They would forever be remembered as Stewart Stranglers or the Montana Stranglers. Within no time, dozens of Montana outlaws had either been strung up in trees or riddled with bullets. The Montana Stock Growers Association was so appreciative of Stewart's efforts, they elected him president of the organization in 1884. That was also anticlimactic, but I guess then we got Texas Vigilantes, the Tin Hat Brigade, Vigilantes and Badmen of Arizona. See what the Tin Hat Brigade is. Maybe that'll be a little more interesting. Texas. Vigilante group was based out of the settlement that had grown up near Fort Griffin, Texas. The frontier towns, Fort Griffin. I'm not sure where that's at. 1874, a man named John Larn joined the brigade, and in respect, he got elected sheriff. Okay, so this law and order were much needed in the Wild Woodland community. In fact, it became so bad in 1874, the lawlessness required the military to declare martial law on the town as the Fort Griffin soldiers tried to run many of the lawbreakers out of town for good. A bunch of other guys said this wasn't good enough, and so they started hanging horse thieves. And then and they called themselves the Tin Hat Brigade. They caught a man in the act of stealing a horse and promptly hanged him to a pecan tree, leaving his body hanging there for all to see. They also left a pick and a shovel below his gruesome remains for anyone who might have wished to remove the thief and bury him. For the next 3 months, Fort Griffin vigilante shot 2 more horse thieves and hanged 6 others. In the meantime, Larn hired John Henry Selman to work for him, but the two were not what they appeared to be. Instead of controlling the area of crime, they controlled the vigilantes, rustling cattle and otherwise terrorizing the county. After serving less than a year as sheriff, Larn resigned and moved on to outright cattle rustling. Within a year, a warrant had been issued for Lamb's arrest in the nude. Yeah, so that doesn't sound like so much like a vigilante as it was. I guess it started as a vigilante, and then it's kind of how a lot of those groups turn out. They start out doing good, and then the power corrupts, like always. And I don't know, just a tale old as time. But I just, if you look at any of these cases versus what happened in Kenosha, I don't see the same thing. It's comparing apples to oranges. But it's I can see where they draw similarities, but I don't know. I don't see it as the same thing. But every time you read about some case of this vigilante justice, there's always the part where law is not being upheld or justice is not being served, and it always starts there. And sometimes they end up doing a lot of good where I never did find much of anything negative about the Anti-Horse Theft Association. I'm sure there was shady dealings going on. like that, this last one, the Tin Hat Brigade, the Montana Stock Growers Association. I don't know about Montana in particular, but the Wyoming Stock Growers Association was initially started to snuff out all these what they called free grazers, or the homesteaders. It was basically a good old boys club of the big ranchers trying to keep the little guys out. So it's hard to say that, but it always starts with like a lack of, or breakdown in law and order, and your average citizen feels like they have to take the matters into their own hands, and that was, I guess that was the case in Kenosha, where they felt like they had to go protect their own businesses. And I don't know. Long story short, good on you, kid. I'm glad he was found not guilty. I hope he sues the shit out of a bunch of these media outlets and wins a bunch of money, and then I hope he goes away. I don't really want to hear much else from him, but that's just me. It was a big win for the Second Amendment, though. I've thought quite a little bit about this case, and I still don't know exactly how to feel. Other than I'm glad that he's innocent. That whole situation is sad, weird, and I don't know. I don't know quite what to think about all of it, but good Rittenhouse. Glad they didn't send him to jail for life. But anyhow, we'll be back on Wednesday with Fence Post Politics, and don't count on much towards the end of the week. Hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving, and move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning